we are happy to include in the coming in the current and coming Zenaton some of the helpers it did to itself basically, and this is what I'm going to share now. It's what we have learned from you, the users, about the best way to use Zenaton on what is actually coming. So I'm going to share my screen again. Yes. So thank you to you. Next step is yes, sort of preview or presentation of the new features on some guidelines, and so it will be basically about a recommended architecture, how to use Zenaton. You will see that we are exposing now a new GraphQL API. It's only a beginning because this API will extend to even more exciting features. But it's I would say first step to an API first product. Then about the new architecture. So this is quite an important subject. But what we have learned basically is that really to benefit at the maximum of Zenaton, it's always better to have your own Zenaton project in a separate repository of your app. Currently, up to now, mostly your task on your workflows were located just inside your app. And what we have learned from users is that actually it slowed down a lot your ability to iterate on your workflow, on your processes. So our recommendation now is basically to really to operate a Zenaton project separately on a separate repository. It does not mean necessarily that it will be installed in another servers. It can be on the same server than you have, but the sources on the everything that define the workflow and the task, we recommend to put them in their own repository. Why is that? Because as I said, it makes much easier to iterate on those workflows, to fix issues, to not depend on the cycle of development of your main app. And if you're sensitive also to that from a technical point of view, it provides a cleaner architecture because you have a clean interface between Zenaton and your app. So the interface between Zenaton and your app will be done through the task. And each task can be, for example, a call to a database. It can be a call, and it's often the case. This is something also that we have learned. Maybe 70–80% of the tasks are actually simple call to external SaaS or API. So it's very simple to put them to put these calls in task. On this task can also be called to your own API or through a microservice, or even to send a message in one of your queue to generate some job later. So having the Zenaton project is in own repository without having to be embedded in your app is both simpler to install. For example, you don't have anymore any difficulties with the agents. For some users, actually, the fact that the Zenaton project was at a so deep level embedded into the app makes it difficult to configure the agent, because basically the agent should know how to boot the sources and how to boot your full application in order to get access to the task or the workflows. So it's easier for that. It can help also for auto-scaling, because, for example, if you do if you trigger a task in your backend through an HTTP call, well, usually the backend is well organized to auto-scale based on HTTP call. It's much easier to do that to auto-scale based on an HTTP call, for example, than based on a message from inside. And the last but not least, of course, as this project is independent of your app, you can use Zenaton with any programming language. So there are no link between the programming language you will use in your app and the programming language that you will use to describe your workflows, for example. So as soon as we have realized that, so we are releasing this new GraphQL API. So this API will allow you currently to do basically to dispatch tasks and to dispatch workflow or some event from any language, any programming language, to Zenaton to trigger to dispatch a workflow or task. This is only the beginning of this API. Later, we want to extend it to the full service of Zenaton, and in particular, the sometimes most requested introspection API. So to be able, for example, to build your own dashboard and to be able to know what the state of the workflows in your own applications. So I don't know if you have any question about that. Also, as we realized that the best practice was to have this separation, it made from them it was more natural for us actually to focus on one language, because if we do that, we do not have anymore any adherence, I would say, any link between your programming language and the programming language you will use to describe workflows. So it seems it was quite natural for us to focus on Node.js, as Florian has started to say. This focus for us was also a way to basically to provide a better service. Honestly, it was quite difficult to maintain a lot of languages because programming the workflow part in every language was a complex task, actually. And so being able to focus on one language is also for us a better ability to provide a better service and to provide more features on this language. So I know that it can be an additional work for people who are already, like Florian said, already in another language. We are willing to help do the transition. So if you have some workflows in another language, we are very happy to help you to do this transition. And I hope that being in Node.js, you can see Node.js has a sort of DSL for the workflow. Being in Node.js should not be a true issue, because usually the description of workflow are quite simple code. So feel free to comment and to tell us what you feel about that. Thank you, Gabin, for the comments. Yes, it's so. We really hope that it will make the architecture much clearer, and that it will position clearly Zenaton as an orchestration tool that do not need to be embedded in your application. Another point is that we are deprecated the connectors. So if you remember, the connectors was some specialized code to connect to a third-party API. Basically, we have realized that those connectors was adding layer of complexity without adding so much benefit. You can use the official SDK of each API provider in the task. Do HTTP call from each task, and so adding this layer of complexity seems actually not worth the benefits. The main benefit we had about the connector was the ability to authentify in a I would say more easy way. We are thinking about how to reintegrate that, how to do that better, but the current connector was not, as far as we have understood, not basically the right way to do it. So we think that it's much simpler, much better, simply to include the SDK API. Sorry, I'm looking at mainly the chat, and I see that there is also some questions. Can we show the new Zenaton API without having to install the agent binary? Can we use, I guess, the new Zenaton API without having to install the agent binary? Actually, you can use the API from your app without installing any agents. You still have to install the agent within your Zenaton project. I hope it's clear. And we are discussing a lot internally also about replacing the agent by basically the agent is a queue consumers. A bit should be more stable and more smart than that, but basically it's a queue consumer. And we are thinking for a long time also to remove it, to replace it by a simple library. But we need your input about that. We need you to tell us if it's a good idea or not. So the API has to be used from your application, and you don't need any agent from within your app. Regarding the serverless stuff, today Zenaton is not serverless, because you still have to install your workflows and tasks somewhere. But of course, this move is a step towards this direction. So to be honest, we don't know yet if serverless is the way to go. It has a lot of appealing features, because you won't have anymore to install any server to host your workflows and tasks. The good thing about this architecture that we propose is that actually, if we switch to serverless, it will be very easy for existing users, because basically it will be the same thing without having to install your own repository, but your own server. But the organization of the code will be mostly the same. Okay, just I'm looking at the comments. Okay, great. Florian, it will be helpful regarding your comment on the chat to better understand which additional service you think that a Gmail connector would do for you, actually. Because as far as we understand, currently the only interest of the connector was the authentication. If you could tell us more about why it will be useful for you, it will help us. I think we are not sure to fully understand it. I'll let you answer and I continue. So also to help you community maintain. Yes, this is something actually about a community maintain task. a set of tasks that could be maintained by a community, or even set of workflow could be useful. Yes. Cool. Thank you for this. Great to know that you feel it's a good idea. So we are going to think about that. Thank you very much for those comments. So we have done also the sandbox. The sandbox is basically a Zenaton project that you can try without having to install the agent. So regarding the commenter, the question regarding the serverless, it's very similar to what could be a future serverless service, as you can try your code on sound events and see the monitoring from the sandbox. The sandbox is not has not been thought to be used in production, but it can be a sort of a preview of what a serverless could be in the future. The way to use the sandbox now is basically you can use it to code and test your code and play with it without having to install anything on your computer. So Florian, I'm looking at your chat. Understand the auth setup. I totally agree. The authentication could be an issue. And understand the pub/sub logic. This one I'm not sure about. Maybe I'm going to try to help. I'm going to try to invite you to stage just to quickly talk about that. Okay, I do not manage. If someone listening and do know how to invite Florian to I mean, he's not online. Okay.
Go to the list of participants?
Yes, but he's not online. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, Florian, I don't know why, but you appear disconnected. So that's why I think I cannot invite you on stage. It will be interesting to understand what you mean by that.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah. Okay. So Gavin is telling us that he will feel more confident having to use a lib. Cool. And run it myself. Yes. Yes. We know that the current agents can look like a black box. Yes. Okay. I'm giving Florian a few seconds to come online. I don't know why it does not appear online to be on stage to discuss the Gmail stuff, but if not, we are going to continue. We'll see after. Then, yeah, I have no idea, Florian. I don't know why you in our interface you appear to yes. I don't know why in our interface something is preventing us to invite you on stage. I don't know why. Sorry about that. You appear actually disconnected. I don't know. So I continue, and we hopefully at the end we can discuss that. So what's new in Node.js? So I was telling you that that focusing on one language would allow us to add more feature. So it's already done. And so since the version 0.7, you will find a new syntax that use generators. I don't know if you know what a generator is, but have a look. It's a nice feature of JavaScript. Basically, you can describe workflow like this one. If you you can look at this small star close to function. It means that this function is specifically a generator. And the generator means that if when I put a yield in front of some command, the code will actually stop. So it means that when you describe the workflow, if you don't put the yield, then the task will be, or workflow will be run in the background. So the workflow will continue to process the line after. So for example, in this case, I will in the same time start to process the task A and wait for the event. Yeah. But as soon as I receive the event, I'm going to have to start again the task A and wait for its completion before going after, because I have this yield keyword. If you are not, it can seem complicated, but it's very simple. If you are not aware of what is a generator function, just have a look. It's easy to, as soon as you have some examples, it's very easy to use. So the new feature for the node, you can, as Florian told us, he has had to build a lot of workarounds to do some basic stuff. So most of them are included now in the Node SDK. For example, you can now dispatch child workflow from a workflow. You can send events from a workflow also. You can pause and resume a workflow from a workflow if you need to, and you can terminate a workflow also. If you are familiar with that, for those interested in sort of theoretical computer science, you will here discover what we call a sort of implementation of the actor model. Basically, it means that you can do whatever you want, whatever workflow distributed on event-based workflow, you can do it with Zenaton due to this feature. So I'm going to show this feature in some code. So I have prepared some small. So I hope that you can basically see my screen. So here I'm able in a workflow, for example, so you will see the description of a workflow. And I'm going to illustrate that I'm able to dispatch a child workflow from this workflow. So the syntax here is this run workflow with the name of the workflow and some inputs. I have built also, we have built, it's not me, we have built also some nice, a nice helper that helped me to dispatch a workflow like this. So I'm going to use this interface. This interface is an example of application. So it's this application will actually use the API to dispatch workflows. And I have the Zenaton project that you have seen the sources. I have the Zenaton project running. And the API will be used to actually trigger a workflow to this project, from this project. So here you can see that I'm dispatching this workflow. And you can see here on my interface that I have a running workflow that have been actually dispatched from this parent workflow. So again, the only thing I need to do to dispatch a child workflow is to run this syntax. Florian told us that we were not good enough for the dashboard. It's still true. We have still work to do because we don't show yet the relationship between the child and the parent workflow on the dashboard. And a good feature typically will be to see a clear link on the parent workflow to follow, to go to the child workflow, and from the child workflow also the ability to come back to the parent workflow. It's not available yet, but it's something that we should work on. And again, tell us if it's important for you. Okay, I'm not going to show you except if you are interested, but we can, from there we can build some. Yes, sorry. One constraint we have today is that we are able to only to dispatch a workflow. So we are not able currently to use the syntax to wait the completion of the workflow to do what is next. Okay, but it's quite easy to emulate that. Basically, what you can do is add the weight of an event here. And on the child workflow, at the end of the workflow, you can send the event to the parent workflow in order to continue. So it's a way to emulate a sequential workflow. And this is interesting also because it shows you how you can send a workflow, an event to another workflow. In this syntax, I have this select workflow. So I select a specific workflow with an ID, and I send some data, the name of the event and some data. So being able to send events within workflow is a very powerful feature, because basically you can, it makes you it allow you to build whatever workflow you want very easily without having to add a lot of scaffolding. Okay, so I come back to some additional features. Yes, terminate the workflow also. Sometimes it's important because sometimes you maybe know that you may terminate a workflow by a return keyword on your main handle functions. But for example, if you want to terminate a function, a workflow based on an event you have received from within the onEvent method, it was not possible and quite messy to do that. So from now, if you use this terminate, sorry. This terminate from anywhere, it will basically kill the workflow. And you can also terminate another workflow if you need to. So you can select a workflow and terminate it also. It will also kill it. Okay, do not hesitate if you have questions. I'm looking at the comment of Florian. Yes. Yes, of course. About the errors, we know that a lot of details could be added in the when there is an error, and especially to know on which workflow it impacted. Because when a task fails, actually everything that the workflow can run, but most of the time it stops a workflow, and it should be shown more clearly. We understand and we recognize that we have a lot of work to do on the dashboard. Okay. Some additional helpers. We are introducing the ability to call dates random or to log stuff directly from inside the workflow. So I can show you some example. Basically, for example, for the date. If you have this type of workflow, for example, could be a conference workflow. The idea is that, for example, you trigger the workflow with some information about the date of the conference. And 1 hour before the conference, you want to send an email. Basically, do not forget the conference. And maybe after that, 2 hours after the conference, you can send an email. You can find here the video, for example. So you can say it's very basic workflow. It's working like this, but the issue with this type of workflow is that, for example, if we are not 1 hour but half an hour before the conference, if the workflow is triggered half an hour before, I don't want to send the first one. So in some situation, you may have some workflow that are time sensitive. So the behavior can depend on the current date. And so for now, you can use this date to manage that. For example, here, you will do something like so the syntax is not correct from a JavaScript point of view, but you will have the idea. Yes. So if you do that, basically this part of the workflow will not be triggered if the current date is less than 1 hour before the conference. So it can be very useful for this sort of time-dependent workflow or date-dependent workflow. Another example about the random, we introduce an helper which is a random. Amin showed us some example where he was doing some sort of A/B testing. It can be done in a much easier way. For example, you can do this choice, this variable equals this random, and so it will trigger. You will obtain a float between 0 and 1. And based on this value, you can actually decide which function, which workflow you want to follow. So if you want to do some A/B testing inside your or some random event inside your workflow, one example of usage is A/B testing. Then it can be very helpful for you. It will prevent you to use the task for that, for example. So you can do it directly from the workflow, and it's much more readable this way. Here you can see the sometimes strange syntax of yield star when you call a generator function from another generator function. It's a bit strange, but basically it just has to be learned. It's quite easy. So here in let's say 20 lines of code, I can check if, for example, one use case of that, you can see that I'm sending one email here. I can send one email there, and for example, task C could store in my database the output of some KPIs and also the choice I've made. And so after a month or after a few weeks, I can understand which workflow is the most efficient, if it's the first one or second one to increase the KPI, for example. So it makes that very, very easy. Do not hesitate if you have questions or comments. No? Okay. We introduced also a simpler system of versioning for the workflow. Basically, you don't have anymore to build a special class describing your workflow. We are using a simpler convention. When you are using a workflow called my workflow, if you, as you know, I think from now, as you know, you can, if you have some running workflow and you want to update the source of the workflow, basically you can do that with Zenaton. And it's very, very good and exciting because it allows you, when you have an idea, to do an update and to release it during the afternoon without having to think, for example, what will happen from the existing workflow, because the existing workflow will run as they were dispatched. and the new one will actually use the new code. So if you are already running a workflow called My Workflow, the only thing you have to do new version will actually to rename your My Workflow to My Workflow _v0. And from there, you can add a My Workflow _v1, and if you want My Workflow _v2, and so on. And each time you will dispatch a new workflow, it will take the last version of your sources. On the existing workflow will continue to run on their own version. So you don't have to build another version class, another class of this workflow, as it was the case before. Just we have just introduced a sort of naming convention that is simpler to use. Okay, so yes, but you have been some inspiration for us, so thank you. Okay, maybe it's time for a few questions because I'm going to show a sample Zenaton project, but I can remind you the main ideas of this principle on guidelines. The main ideas are that please have put your workflow and task inside their own repository with clear interface between your application on the Zenaton project. Use the API to interact with the workflows and benefit from the advances of the new library. Good question about of Martin. Thank you. The question is if a parent dispatch a child workflow, that the parent is killed if the child the child killed if the parent is killed. Currently, it's not the case. Currently, as soon as you dispatch, they are independent, but probably it will be a good idea to add some settings when you dispatch a workflow, maybe some metadata to tell us, if you want, what happens if the parent workflow is killed or terminated. Currently, if it's the case, if you terminate the parents, the child continues to run. So you have to terminate it by yourself currently. It can be automated also. Everything can be automated. So for example, you can send an event to the parent workflow. Instead of terminate it, you can send an event asking to terminate, and the parent can programmatically terminate its child and terminate itself after that. But it's not the most convenient way. I think the most convenient way would be for us to provide an option for that. Yeah. The fact is, we cannot decide. That this is the case in every case, as Gabin was saying. We cannot decide that every time a parent workflow is killed, the child workflow should be killed, because it depends on the use case. So it should be a sort of an option, I guess, because this is a business decision. I let you a few seconds to ask more questions if you want to. No? Okay. So the last part is to showcase a sample of the Zenaton project, and I suggested to do it on the sandbox for you to have a preview to see how it works. And The example is document validation. Basically, it's a workflow where the user has to upload let's say two documents. For example, his passport on maybe something else, and we have a reminder. So after 3 days, if nothing has been uploaded, we can send him a reminder. And we decided that after 3 reminders, the process is failed, and so we send an email to tell the users, for example. But after, if not, if we manage to have both documents, then the process is a success. So I have added this workflow. Basically, so the workflow is those 40 lines. I have not coded here the task, but the task will be, in this case, will be basically some HTTP call to the SendGrid API if you use SendGrid, for example, for sending email. And it can be, or it can include also some call or some data, some call to your own app, depending on what you want to do and how you want to be informed of the success or the failure of the workflow, for example. But basically, you can see how it works. So I have defined some input here. So the workflow will be launched with a user object. Here I just have a simple email and some documents. Here I have 2 types: driver license, for example, and the passport. Okay. I've said nothing about that, but I entirely agree with the remark of Florian. Actually, we recommend to limit the size of the data you exchange between the workflow and the task. It should most of the time it should be IDs or simple structure. For the current version, the previous version of Zenaton, we have developed a quite powerful serializer that allow you to embed any object, and so it was nice to use, but actually it encourage you. It would encourage you to put some domain dependence logic inside the workflow. And I think from a separation of concern perspective, it's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do should be to exchange just the information you need to build the logic of your workflow. So I entirely agree with Florian that you should exchange the limited set of data that you need to basically operate your workflow and decide what to do. But putting in the workflow the whole big set of data, depending on your domain, does not look like a good idea. So in this case, you can see it's quite simple, and so I've decided that I will do the reminder 3 times at maximum, for example. Here I have a counter that tell me that based on the input, I will have 2 documents to wait, and I will loop. So you have a while, and the condition to go out of the loop is the counter can reach 0, so it means that the user has completed the process, or at the opposite, it has received already 3 reminders, and so it has failed the process. That's why after the loop, you have this test. Basically, if this counter equals 0, then you can notify a success. If not, you can notify a failure. And then inside the loop, I will wait for an event. So somewhere in your application, you will have an interface where you basically receive the documents. probably you will validate them and then send an event to this workflow. We're using the Zenaton API to tell that this event has been received. So the interest of that is that the time for the event-driven behavior on the time is well managed by Zenaton without having to install any cron, any database to store any transient state or whatever. You just have to write this code and everything is working as expected. Just for the sake of the demo, you don't want to wait 3 full days, so I'm going to just going to wait, for example, for 10 seconds instead of 3 full days. And so, as you may know, if you know Zenaton, when you have this type, you are waiting for this event. If event here is undefined, it means that the timeout of the waiting has triggered, and so it means that the event has not been received. And if it has not been received, I will send the reminder and decrease the counter of reminders. If it has been received, then I will check that it is valid, for example, and decrease the counter of the number of documents I want to wait. So this interface, this is our sandbox. So it's runnable. You don't have, if you want to play with it, you don't have to install anything. You just have to write the code and run it. So, for example, I'm launching it, and you can see here that so the property, it's the counter. So this is due to this command, this counter. And now I'm waiting 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, I have sent the email reminder, waiting again, 10 seconds, send the email reminder, and hopefully one last time. Okay, so now the process has failed because, so here it happens for, let's say, 40, 45 seconds, but in real life, it will be more something like 3 days, 10 days, 3 days, 3 times. So in other situation, for someone else, maybe I will wait 3 days, for example, and then send reminders. But then I receive the events, the first documents. So I'm waiting, still waiting for the second document, and then I receive the second document, or just after the reminder. But I write easy. Oh, it's interesting this case. So you can see here that actually there is a flow in the code because what happens is that the event has been received at a stage where he was not waiting for it because he was actually doing something else. This is due to the yield here. It means that during that time this reminder was actually triggered. He was not waiting for the event, and so you have 2 ways to fix that. You can actually remove this yield because you don't need to wait for this task to be processed before waiting again for the event. Basically, it's useless. Or another way to fix that is to build a persistent event. You can look at the documentation. Persistent event means that you can with using the onEvent function, you can store the information that you have received this event, even if you are not waiting for it. So here, basically, what happens was the defect in the way the workflow is described. It's. I was not supposed to see this, but it's very interesting to have seen it, and it would be very interesting to know if you have fully understand the issue or not in this case. So the issue is, again, I can tell you, the issue is that here you are giving the instruction that to wait for the event. Then you are leaving this, so you are not waiting anymore for these events. And here you are giving the instruction to send an email and wait for the completion of the email. So if you receive the event during this time, the workflow has nothing to do with the event, so it does not trigger anything. If you remove this, and basically it's better to remove it because you don't need to send sequentially the email. The email will be sent basically, and the workflow will continue and wait again for the event. So you won't have any step, any time where you don't wait for the event. I hope it's clear for everyone. So I'm going to launch it again. So then I send the first event, so it's waiting again. And when the second document is received, I will send the send email registration complete, and the workflow is completed. Okay, basically, it was a simple example I wanted to show to you. I wanted in the same time have this opportunity to show you the sandbox, which is a single place where you can still try something in your code, some events. You can define a new event, for example. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you define a new event with some new data, and send it manually there. You can update it, of course, for example. Also on the right, you have some tutorial if you want to try. If, for example, I can go to this tutorial and try a new one. So it can help you to have some insight or example how to do that. Again, do you have any comments or any question? Not really? Okay. So basically, this is the end of what we wanted to show. Again, I would like to thank very strongly David, Aymin, and Florian, who took some time to share with us the use they did with of Zenaton, and thanks for them. We are excited to show you what is new for Zenaton. I hope that the change we have exposed makes sense for you. And now we have a time for discussion. It could be so you can if you want, you can stay and we can chat together, or like we would have done in physical. And if not, thank you for being here, and it was exciting to have you. And I hope that this presentation has inspired you to try new things and to do better workflow, better processes for your business. Thank you so much. First question of Diane: Will it be possible in the future to define that the workflow can be executed in a unique way? So I believe you. Thank you, Gavin. Diane, I think your question is to set up to have a settings to make sure that workflow there's only one instance of a workflow running at a time, for example. So to have a sort of singleton, yes. something that's quite close that we are discussing is that the ability for a workflow to run forever. So we could have this is what we call a long running workflow. Maybe it's not a very good name because it's not it's ever running workflow mostly. And so the idea will be to have a unique workflow that can run forever, and that can receive events and do whatever you want based on those events. A typical use case would be, for example, for example, Shipio is doing this type of stuff. If you receive an alert or some event, you want to aggregate them and do something only after you have received, for example, 10 of them within a time window of 3 hours. It will be the way to go. Currently, it's not a good practice to have an always running workflow due to due to the memory consumption, but it's a technical issue for us. We know how to solve it, but it's not solved yet. So in the future, the idea will be to have ever running workflow, and so you won't have to run another instance to do whatever you want. And tell me if it answers your question. If not, it would be nice to have an example or a use case of what you need such a workflow. Martin, what will happen to our task in different languages? So basically, as I said, the fact that the workflows, you can see Node.js has the DSL for the workflows. If you have domain specific, so tasks that are specific to your application, you will keep them in PHP in your case. You will keep them in PHP. What can be different is the way to trigger them. So basically, you can have the logic could be in Node, but you can trigger the task in PHP. And we can discuss that together if you want, how to do that. Has anyone any more question? No? I hope that I would like to invite you to have a drink, but so it's the limitation of the online exercise. It was our first online conference, so it's not easy because we don't see you, as I said in the beginning. I hope that you have had a good time. I hope also that we will be able to meet another time. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for your interest in Zenaton. And basically, we are very open to discuss any subject. Provide your feedbacks. It's very helpful for us. So if you don't have any more questions, I will just thank you again and close this first conference. Thank you.